Regardless of what you've heard, the European Union is increasingly being bullied by China. The battle for global hegemony between America and China is putting serious cracks in the EU's foundations. China is becoming more and more cocky and aggressive in its penetration of the European markets and competition with the EU's heavy industries. Indeed, a strong European Union is an obstacle in the path of China's march to global economic, financial, and military superiority. In this video, I will tell you how China is turning the European Union into an economic punching bag by applying aggressive trade coercion as a measure to obtain European political concessions on the issue of Taiwan, in addition to economic concessions that are bound to weaken the EU's global share in manufacturing and electronics. Welcome to World Econ News, your daily dose of economics and finance. If you are interested in topics influencing the world economies and global financial flows, this is the place for you. Watch till the end if you want to get the latest answers. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification button to get the latest updates. Let's go! China is a rising giant. No nation on Earth, including America, is able to keep up with its economic growth, innovation, global expansion as soft power, and speed of building and manufacturing everything and anything that can cross your mind. China is unofficially the world's #1 economic superpower, and is on the verge of becoming the #2 global military superpower. China is well aware of its indestructible economic strength, global influence, and military might. In recent years, it has begun transforming its soft power tactics in dealing with other nations into hard power and coercion tactics. In 2020, it gained full control of Hong Kong as the whole world watched in mere dismay, and now it has openly laid out a plan to annex Taiwan through invasion if necessary. In the past decade, it bullied all nations overlooking the South China Sea out of their share in the sea and its resources. It literally claimed more than 80% of the sea as Chinese territories. It even built artificial islands and placed military outposts on them. It has also drowned many small countries in debt, and then used their inability to make payments as a gate to interfere in their financial and economic agendas, while gaining full control of many of these nations' major economic projects and natural resources. The mounting aggressive bullying and trade coercion behavior by China, in addition to its incredibly terrible and even criminal human rights record, and the fact that it is a one-party totalitarian regime, forced many countries from around the world, including the European Union, to apply and increase pressure and sanctions on the Chinese government and some political, military, and business elites. However, the sanctions and pressure by the EU and USA are not producing any positive results, and they seem to be mainly utilized as a negotiating card in business and trade deals. Hence, such pressure and sanctions can constitute a form of bullying because they lack sincerity. Many experts predicted that sooner or later, China's political, economic, and manufacturing strength will begin causing economic, financial, and political waves across Europe. China and the EU are becoming more and more economically and financially interconnected every day. Hence, issues, disagreements, competition, protectionism, and problems are bound to arise. The European Union, by all means, is not some small or poor country that China can simply use its soft power to fence, confuse, destabilize, coerce, and put in its pocket. The EU as a collective is militarily stronger than China, and economically just as big as China. The European Union is also the core of NATO, and is backed with blood pacts by the United States. Nevertheless, China is pressing forward with testing Europe's abilities in countering its global economic, political, and financial expansion goals. China needs Europe more than Europe needs it. So far, China's strategy has been focused on limiting European investors' ability to capitalize on its immense growth and massive markets through limiting access to accurate information, secrecy, and forcing the EU as a whole into a trade deficit, meaning the EU imports from China more than it exports to China. China is also trying to force the EU to approve the CAI, China's Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, which according to Germany will be the beginning of the end of Europe's heavy industries and car manufacturing. In 2021, China's long-term intentions and plans for the EU began to become clearer. Just last November, Lithuania, the small EU state, allowed Taiwan to open an official embassy. China responded with anger, rage, and threats, and began using trade as a weapon to crush Lithuania. The Chinese state media described Lithuania as a mouse or even just a flea under the feet of fighting elephants. Here is a list of China's trade coercion measures against Lithuania. Number 1. Beijing has recalled its ambassador to Lithuania, downgraded diplomatic relations with Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, and barred all imports of Lithuanian goods. Number 2. Beijing is indirectly pressuring European companies to stop using Lithuanian products in their supply chain. Such intervention violates international trade rules. Number 3. China's embargo on Lithuania is hitting manufactured goods from other EU countries such as France, Germany, and Sweden because they are dependent on Lithuanian supply chains. Number 4. Beijing stopped direct China-Lithuania freight trains. It also closed credit lines for Lithuanian companies. According to experts, China's true goals with its trade weaponization in dealing with Lithuania on the Taiwan issue is just a facade, because in reality, it is testing the level of EU unity and ability as a collective to respond to its current and future intrusive economic and financial tactics for meddling in the bloc's agendas. In addition, beating it as a major global economic, manufacturing, and financial hub. It is also eyeing a chunk of the EU's massive electronics market, which can aid it in the future in annexing a big slice of the American share of the global electronics market. Here is a list that describes China's recent strategy in subduing the European Union. Number 1. China's trade surplus with the 27-nation European Union, its second largest trading partner, swelled 57.4% in 2021, over a year earlier to $209 billion. China's exports to the EU rose to $520 billion, while imports of European goods gained $309.9 billion. This massive and growing EU trade deficit with China is a strong signal that the EU is in decline as a global economic and manufacturing power. In the long term, this can mean serious rattling in the EU's manufacturing and electronic jobs rates. Number 2. China is pushing the EU out of a large share of Europe's and the global electronics markets. Most experts and even EU politicians expressed serious concerns that China is hampering the bloc's productivity and innovation in the electronics sector. The EU's global share in electronics has been gradually falling in the past decade. Number 3. China's trade war with the USA harmed the EU. The clash between America and China over metals has been one of the darkest clouds looming over transatlantic relations in recent years, and one of the chief reasons why former US President Trump described the EU metals exports to the USA as a threat to national security. The issue of American tariffs on many EU goods, commodities, and services was not triggered by authentic American concerns, but rather by China's somewhat unfair competitive practices that in turn triggered poorly calculated American responses that literally did not distinguish between Chinese and European imports. Even now, after the Biden administration partially lifted many of the tariffs, the EU is still getting a bitter deal, while China is capitalizing and gaining from the situation. As of right now, China is winning the economic war against the EU. There are no signals that the EU member states are able to reinforce their financial, political, economic, and energy goals and policies through more unity. The EU states seem to be increasingly divided on many important issues, including China's bullying of Lithuania. Meanwhile, Taiwan created a $200 million fund to invest in Lithuania's economy, boost bilateral trade, and has even sent an expert team to help the Baltic EU state set up its own semiconductor industry. Taiwan, which is located 100 miles from mainland China, is stepping up for Lithuania, while the European Union so far has been unwilling to challenge China, even as it threatens, extorts, and blackmails an EU member state, which is quite embarrassing. The European Union has been losing its edge as an economic and military superpower. The recent events in Lithuania, combined with the trade deficit, manufacturing, and electronic sector numbers, represent a signal that the EU has become a mere battleground where China and the USA are conducting a cold economic war. China is unlikely to perform direct, aggressive coercion measures and bullying tactics against the EU as a whole, but it will pick on one state at a time in order to create further divisions and tensions. Beijing is banking that the rising protectionist mentality and excessive nationalism among the EU member states' populations will lead the bloc to become weaker as more countries might follow in the UK's steps and exit the Union. All experts and analysts agree that the EU as a unified bloc, with all of its flaws, is the Europeans' best bet to counter the coming of the predicted Red Dawn. Would you like to learn more about what influences the world economies and global financial flows? Click on one of the videos that showed up on the left, or go to our channel to find other interesting topics.